Good afternoon, good evening, good zinta, good y'all, whatever it may be where you are. I'm not Sports Cards. Hope you're doing well. Remember, like, subscribe. Every new subscriber we get, comment too. Every new subscriber we get, I do a new video. So make the monkey dance and subscribe now. Today, I'm going to talk. I'm going to do a little what if. You ever see the Marvel series, Star Wars series, whatever they do, where they do what if? Um, Been some weird stuff going on. I've got Fanatics events in the background. I don't really go to card shows. I love to talk about things I know nothing about. All right, that's not true. It's not that I don't know nothing about. It's been a lifetime inside of different corporations, watching them rise and fall. And there's some telltale signs of things that go wrong. And I've been inside markets that have shot to the moon and come back to earth. For those of you who don't know, Fanatics Fanatics owns Tops. They started out and they are like kind of a sports, you know, what the hell would you call them? Like almost a sports apparel business or sports chazarai business, as you might say, merch. And then they acquired Tops at kind of the height of the sports card boom. Not only they were going to buy Panini as well, that fell through. And again, just doing a little brief history of time. They're a big company. They also own a sports betting. They bought something called PointsBet, and they're in sports betting business. And I've used their sports betting platform, and I've got some thoughts there. So they bought Tops. So the big what if here is like, what if Fanatics goes bankrupt? Not really bankrupt. It's really what if Tops goes bankrupt, right? Like, can this happen? I don't know. I don't want you to get caught up in the semantics of the word bankrupt or whatever. I think the what if scenario is, what if Fanatics decides to get out of the card business? Either they're forced. I think they decide it's not for us. We're not. This isn't what we're good at, and we got to get it out of it to get back to the things that we do well, or that maybe the sports betting business is really good and that they decide to focus there. So when they bought Tops, height of the pandemic, valuations on companies were different. Not height of the pandemic, but that's when they got into the business and they were looking to get Panini. But what they did after that was they signed deals with the NBA and the NFL for licensing. And one could assume, and I am a betting man, so I'd bet a significant amount of money. They paid a shit ton for these licensing deals, meaning they paid through the nose to make sure that they were going to have licensed football and basketball, which I think is either coming next year or the year after. And it's one of the most puzzling moves that I have ever seen in business. It's complicated in the sense of like, it's pretty rare, the situation that they were in, because yes, they got in the card business. They think the card business is going to do really well. And they're like, how do we get these, baseball is not the most valuable licensing for merchandising, right? I'm sure they look at the NFL and the NBA. They sell more jerseys. They sell more, T-shirts and other stuff. So like, hey, how do we get those things? And I believe they paid through the nose for that stuff, right? Makes sense, right? But the issue here is that they couldn't get it, I think, until it's either 25 or 26, and it may not be the same for NBA as it is for the NFL. And they've got some player deals or whatever, but Panini is like, okay, you have 3 years. You're not getting this license. I think the deals are 5 or 10 years. I think they're 10 years with the NBA and the NFL, and they even made them partners and all this other shit. Again, this is at the height of like NFTs, and we're gonna fucking everybody like Mark Cuban's out there telling this Top Shot and all this other shit. Which again, I'm not ripping all that stuff. I'm just saying there was a lot of euphoria and a lot of ideas being thrown around that have not yet panned out the way that we had hoped or they had hoped. So they paid a shit ton of money, right, for something they're not going to get for a few years in a business that is now declining. And their competitor is like, well, I think we should print as many of these fucking cards as we can because we don't care what the value of new trading cards is in the NBA and the NFL in a couple years. We don't. Like, let's print them out to the moon. Let's put fucking downtown sideways in here. Let's put the kabooms in every pack. Let's put 50 fucking thousand things in here. While people are getting, it's somebody, if you literally had a printing press that printed $20 bills, right? And somebody's like, okay, I'm buying the printing press in 3 years. So, just letting you know, I'm going to own this in 3 years. You're like, I better print as many more of these fucking $20 bills as I can. And like, at the end of the time, I mean, like, there's probably a better analogy than $20 bills because the supply, it does matter, but we'll get deep into economics on the money supply idea. But yeah, what a fucking ridiculously bad business move. Like, wait till the end, right? Like, they're so excited to get these licensing rights that they jumped the gun for 3 years and gave their competitor the opportunity to destroy the thing they just paid for in a market that has already peaked. Like, so the value of those licensing deals at the end, like when they actually get them from Panini, between the combination of a sports card market that is in decline, and an oversupply created by their competitor to their advantage, it could put them in a situation where they're like, why did we get in this business? And I know none of these are certainties. This is just, we're spitballing. We're having fun here, right? Like, people are like, no, fucking Michael Rubin's a billionaire and he'll just throw money at it. He's going to 10x the hobby and you're a fucking moron, Mike. Like, maybe, sure. Like, or maybe he's like, what am I doing? Right? There's a lot of Fanatics bonds have been downgraded to junk bonds and whatever. And you can get into those weeds, but like, I'll give you an example of where something like this happened that it made no sense on the surface, and that corporations aren't always smart. Sometimes it's because there's too many cooks in the kitchen, and they make their investors force them to do things. Barstool Sports, if you're familiar with it, big media platform, was bought by Penn Gaming a few years ago. They bought like half of them, and then they decided to brand them to make a sports book. Sound like a company we know about, like Fanatics. They ended up paying, I think, like somewhere in the ballpark of like $500 to $700 million for Barstool Sports. And then it wasn't doing as well as they thought it would. And they had the opportunity to get in bed with ESPN for ESPN Bet. And they sold back Barstool Sports for $1 to Dave Portnoy because the company was losing money. They're like, okay, yeah, we own it. And we paid $700 million, but it is costing us money every month to operate it. But, at the time, people are like, why are you doing this? And it was an absolutely horrible move by Penn Gaming because ESPN Bet hasn't really taken off, and Barstool Sports by itself, like, they would have been better off just like spinning off Barstool Sports, owning a piece of it. Like, there are some stipulations that make it a little more complicated, but it was a horrible move. How do you pay $700 million for something and then hand it back for $1? Again, the sunk cost fallacy. The idea is like, if it's costing you $10 million a month and you have no way of figuring out a way to a profit, it's better to just get rid of it. So in my scenario, I think you could get to a point where these licensing deals are costing them so much money, and, you have to service the debt that's associated with them. They just feel like, how can we jettison this stuff and send it somewhere else to somebody who, maybe can make money off of it and like try to get it off our books. And I can definitely foresee that happening, right? Like, especially if you're in a situation where you have to service your debt. Again, not these interesting things that people really want to talk about, but what happens then? Who ends up owning Topps, and they could spin it off, they could try to go public, but what kind of company that is in a market that is, maybe not thriving at the time, you don't go public. Like, they've been talking about Fanatics going public, and it's like, they were supposed to go public this year. Now they're talking about, end of 2025. That's never a good sign. Like, it can, I'm not saying like that doesn't uh, that never happens where IPOs get pushed off and they're fine. The last one that I remember like that was WeWork. I mean, that's a terrible kind of probably comparison, but like this shit could go sideways. There's a much greater chance of this shit going sideways than people think. Now, I don't think this is like a hey, what odds would you give that Fanatics is not running tops in 36 months? I don't know. Maybe 50-50, maybe less. Like maybe it's like only a 25% chance they're not. But I mean, most people think it's like that would never happen. Like, where Michael Rubin's in this for long haul. He loves cards. He goes to the National. No, he's a capitalist. He loves money. He loves influence, right? I mean, he sold a lot of celebrities on the card idea. I do think, like, the moves, like, his famous 10x, the hobby thing is like, I think they thought it at the time. I still think they're trying to push into things beyond the four sports because the licensing deals are more affordable. There are more Disney fans. Disney's like a huge untapped thing. They own Star Wars and Marvel. All this stuff. Like there are a lot of places for them to go to try to make cards and create card collectors. But in all honesty, it's not. The money is not in trying to make more money out of the existing sports. It's just not. Like if you pay a huge licensing deal and you have an established collector base, it's just much more complicated than you would think. They create, what is it, Fanatics Live, where they're doing breaking. It's just a lot of, they're trying to do a lot of things. And they're like, I don't know if you've been on Fanatics Live, but that thing kind of sucks. Like, breaking to me is about entertainment. And I don't find most of their breakers to be entertaining. It's just the Wild West. Like, Whatnot is the Wild West, but like you find like kind of the cream rises to the crop over on Whatnot, and those fuckers are entertaining. They might be used car salesmen, and I have my own problems with them. But again, the elements of Fanatics card business, like I had up here, like Fanatics collects. What was this? PWCC at one point, the Shillathon at one point, the Vault. Like, I participated in some auctions here where it's like, oh, they crashed. We're going to reset them and do them tomorrow. These were thousands and thousands of dollars a card. I would never think of auctioning my card there. Maybe people do. I'm seeing big cards up here. Like, I just don't find them to be incredibly competent. Remember Josh Luber, the guy who was like in charge of this, or like the chief visionary officer? What happened to him? What happened to Zero Cool? And the Fanatics events, right? I started off with that, but like Fanatics events were like, they did Fan Fest. In New York this summer, and I remember watching it, and the term loss leader, which is like, yeah, sometimes you lose money knowing that you're trying to make a splash and that you'll get it back in the future. And the value of something like if the National Card Show sold, like you could, like there was an owner of the National Card Show and they could sell it to somebody, it's probably worth a few $100 million. I know that seems crazy to you, but it's not. Trust me. So like that's probably the idea is like, we can invent our own national card show. It's worth a few $100 million. So to lose the estimated, whatever it was, $15 to $25 million on the Fan Fest, made sense. But then they tried to do Pittsburgh. They tried to do Orlando, and they canceled Orlando at the last minute and said, it was because of a hurricane. It was a bunch of bullshit, right? And they really, left people hanging. And once you lose the trust of dealers are not going to sign up for it in the future. And that would mean that in order to get dealers to like sign on for your events in the future, you're going to have to like basically lose more money. You're going to have to basically give away the tables or get them crazy hotel deals. Like people are just not going to be as willing to do this. And I have noticed that like some of the people that would never say a bad thing about Topps, who are breakers for them, are calling them out on this shit, which means, in my opinion, that allocations of product are not as valuable as they used to be. It used to be that people would bow down at the altar of Topps because, hey, you sell me a box for $100, I can immediately sell for $200. So of course I'm gonna give you the reach around on that because I want to be able to make my money. But now, like Topps has cut out a lot of the middlemen, and they've been very, very they've been changing the allocations and that stuff. So they're, they're a business. They want to make money. No problem with that. But they're going to cut out the margins. They're going to make the margins for the breakers smaller. So the breakers are now like, I have the customers. You need me to break. So they're much more likely to be like, hey, Tops, you're a fucking asshole on this Fanatics event deal where you had me sign up and spend all this money. And they're just kind of names in the hobby that usually don't shit talk Tops that have been. And that is probably the number one sign. When I said I've been in different industries and watched them rise and fall over time, like that's one of the biggest signs where you're like, hey, remember those guys that used to like back you 100%? The fact that they're now willing to talk shit about you, it's not that like the tune has changed. It means your power has changed, which means your company is weak. And that is my feeling on Tops. It is not strong. Fanatics does not have the access to capital that it once had. If it goes public, sure. But it may, I think, like I said, in order to go public, they may, the underwriter might be like, you need to jettison this trading card division. This is losing you too much fucking money. So leads me to be like, okay, let's say this scenario unfolds where, this, the event business, which was a huge failure. It was like, I want to go back to the events for a second. Like FanFest, like watching the videos in New York, like I thought it was fun to watch. Like it looked like a really cool event. But people like, there were a lot of people here. And, we're kind of, they thought there weren't going to be a lot of people here. And they were like, oh, the cards were off on the side. And they weren't. Where the thing is that, like, it was in New York City, which has over 10 million people. They fucking gave away those tickets. Like, if you've ever been in the event business or around it, it's like, those are spoiled milk. When it comes down to the last few days when you're like, okay, we can fit 100,000 people in here and we've sold 10,000 tickets, you go to every radio station, you go to everywhere else. You're like, hey, how about if we give you 5,000 tickets and you give us airtime? How if we give you 1,000 tickets when you do this, you do this? You just start trading tickets for anything, or you give them for future goodwill, because the truth is, in a week, they're going to have zero value to you. So any value you can do anything you can do to extract value, even in goodwill going forward, you do. And on top of it, the last thing you want to do is see an empty venue. So they're just fine. Like the idea that hey, a lot of people showed up. Like, I promise you, the number of paid attendees at that show versus people who got discount or free tickets was astonishing. All right, those passerbys. I mean, it's New York. Like, you can just give that shit away. And that's what happened. That's why they got a bunch of people. Is that speculation by me? Of course, but I've been in business long enough, been in that type of stuff long enough to know that's what you do, right? Been in the advertising business where I own magazines and stuff. And we would get to press and we'd be like, okay, we've got 2 full pages left. We're going to go to press. What can we get for them? And I'd call a bar and be like, hey, how about you give me a bar tab for the month for a full page? They're like, sure. We're going to pay $40 for this vodka, and we'll get you in here and we're going to get a page ad. And I'm like, I'm not going to get anything for this. And yeah, it used to be a lot of fun because I would, I used to get country club memberships and these crazy other memberships from Empty Space and the Thing. And it was like, but yeah, fun businesses. So, all right, this happens. What if, they go out of business? Who buys them? And the answer to me is, the funniest thing to me would be Panini, right? That would be the funniest thing in the world to me, is that, they basically tried to put Panini out of business. They tried to buy them. There were lawsuits. They tried to push them out of place. And like, Panini's like, you know what we know how to do? We know how to run a card business profitably. And yeah, we might have destroyed the value of the cards, but like Dave Portnoy buying back Barstool Sports, are like, if you want to sell it to us for $1, we can figure it out, right? And, I don't know who else is out there, but like, if you look in the history of time of cards, like Fleer was a good company, good company, made a lot of money, and then they just got out over their skis and Fleer was gone, right? It's happened over time. And it doesn't mean that the brand Tops wouldn't survive. 100% with the brand. I mean, that's the biggest value they have, is the actual brand Tops. The average person who knows nothing about sports cards or any cards is like, what do you know any brand of trading cards? I'd be like, Tops, because at some point in their life, most likely everybody bought Tops. But it'd be really funny to me if Panini bought them and it was like full circle that, you know, the Panini, who they tried to push out of business, who they stole the licenses from, comes back and is like, yeah, we'll buy your company for 10 cents on the dollar and then we'll make it work again. I actually think something like that is going to happen because it, in actuality, like I don't wish bad things upon people, but like the cards got pushed too hard and too far. They're just not as valuable as the amount of money that got into them, and we need somebody to take the big L. And it would be awesome if it were the billionaires instead of us, right? And that we could go back to, like, I have had questions of like, how do we go back to when you could buy like a hobby box for $40 and there was an on-card auto in it? I'm like, well, the market has to correct, which means it kind of has to crash a bit, which it has, but like the new product has to crash too. It's like people have to be like, you know what? I don't want that sticker auto. I don't want to pay $200. And that it, you know, the only way that can really happen is if like we'll end up in a standoff. People have to stop ripping, right? On one level, which I don't think people will ever really stop ripping, but there'll be leftover product, which I think we're seeing now. Is like, you know, obviously during the pandemic, like there are people camped out at Target to buy retail. And there are still people who do that a little bit, but it seems like there's always product, right? Maybe there'll be a hot thing here and there. That's, you know, that's different than 100% of the market working. It's like part of the reason that distributors worked in and allocations worked in cards was that it was like, hey, I'll sell you this super popular Topps Chrome, but you've got to buy my fucking Gremlins 2 cards, right? Like you've got to take the shit with the sunshine. And it all was sunshine for a while. And now we're getting back to where it's shit and sunshine and much more shit than sunshine. And that'll bring boxes down. Like, you know, you can look like Game of Thrones, Rittenhouse, just put out this Legends of the Realm set. 5 packs per box. Every pack's got an autograph, and you know they're already down to $190, right? Like that product should probably be $100. And the truth is like there's many layers to it. Like, hey, it's not just the licensing fees that they pay, like HBO or whoever owns Game of Thrones, but it's like, well, how much are they paying the actors? Like, okay, well, last year we paid you 10,000. This year we can only pay you 4, right? You don't want to do it? Oh well, right? Like that's just the way it's going to be. And like again, the world is like you know, some people will be like no, some people will be like yes, and like it needs to start healing. And some of the healing will come from like if there's a huge write-off of Topps, and that, you know, Panini didn't have to try to put out an $8,000 Victor Wembanyama box or a Shohei Ohtani box to try to make some of this money back and suck all of the money out of the hobby, it would be a much more sustainable ecosystem. Like that's the first time I've said the words sustainable ecosystem. And that is what this is all about, is that what has transpired over the last few years is absolutely unsustainable. It's not. Like the amount of money that has gone into grading, the amount of money that has gone into new product, it's not sustainable. People cannot extract that value, which means like, you know, I spend $5,000 a year on, it's a high number, on combined grading and new product. And previously I at least was able to get 3,500 back. Well, now I'm able to get 2,000 back. That's a huge differential, right? Because I went from being net 1,500 negative to net 3,000 negative. That means my 2-year budget is now, in my 1-year budget is, my 2-year budget is now a 1-year budget in actuality. And that needs to fix. That needs to heal. And the market is beginning to heal. People are grading less. People aren't buying every last product they see. You know, people are realizing that, hey, in the first month that a product comes out, the cards shoot up, and not everybody is racing out to get it. Some people still do. You know, there's a full born every minute. Yeah, I mean, but I see it, and I think that it's an interesting, the reason why this is an interesting thought exercise is it makes you dismiss or get rid of some things that you are rock solid on, that you hold to be true, that Fanatics is in this for the long term, and that Topps is a these guys control the hobby. The truth of this, at the end of the day, the people who control the hobby are the collectors or the buyers. Like, as you have fewer flippers, flippers don't exist as much. You're getting back to having dealers. Dealers, there have always been dealers and collectors. Flippers are different. Flippers are like, I'm in, I'm out, I'm done. It doesn't mean like, hey, there are dealers that are like, hey, I bought this one card for $20 and I just sold it for 40. It's also like, I bought this one card for $20 5 years ago and I just sold it for 40, right? Like, that's just, hey, some inventory moves faster than another. But the whole idea that everything can just be flip, 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 there's just less of them. Doesn't mean none of them, but it's kind of, going back to the original idea of you have dealers and you have collectors, and that those are the people that control the hobby. At the end of the day, it's the people who bring disposable income to the hobby. The people who bring fresh money to the hobby are the ones that matter. The people who are buying a new box, you're going to work, you're earning your money. At the end of the week, you're taking your disposable income and you're saying, I want to buy a box, right? And sure, there are times that you make money off a box, there are times you lose money, but the delta has grown too large. Meaning that, you used to buy a box for $200 or $100 and you get $70 worth of cards out of it. Now you buy a box for $225 and get $70 worth of cards. That has got to shrink and end at some point. And I don't know, I think the hobby will end up being in a bigger, healthier place when it all happens. It may, it's already hurt. I'm sure you've bought some cards that you haven't done well on. I'm sure you've graded some cards you haven't done well. Not every move is a perfect one. But, like, I think as we get to more of a collector-based hobby, and the speculation will always exist, but it isn't purely speculation-based, it matters that it's a sustainable ecosystem. That, like, my budget of $1,500 net negative each year, which doesn't mean it's a negative in a sense that this is the money I lost. But it's like, oh, I bought $5,000 worth of cards in grading. I sold $3,500 worth of cards in grading. I still might have $1,500 worth of cards. Like, it doesn't mean you're losing money. It just means that the amount of fresh money that is coming into it can be normalized. And I think that is the thing that if Topps were to be decoupled from Fanatics and kind of be a write-off, that would be a huge step in that right direction, because they would no longer be beholden to these huge contracts and this debt burden and all these other things, and that they could, like, it's like Barstool. Barstool, when they, again, I hate using that as a sole example, but it's recent. It's like they came in and they're like, hey, our job before was to grow. And now he's like, okay, our job is to make a profit. He's like, sorry, I love you guys, but like half of you people I can't have here because this business is meant to make a profit, not to just grow every year and show shareholders it can grow. And the same thing could happen at Topps. It'd be like, let's stop burning $25 million on a card show, which is also fucking up other card shows out there, and they're not making as much money. Like, let's reduce the cost, like the cost of our product, right? Like, and and like, let's get people to to get value out of it so they'll buy more. It's like it's the shearing the sheep mentality. This episode might be groaning from the number of analogies and metaphors and all the other things I'm doing, but like, take a step back. I know I'm not the average person who gets in the hobby. Some people like to just step in it and be like, all right, I like cards. It's a pretty card. This is $500. Whatever. I could have went to a concert today and it would have cost me $500. So I don't really think about it. This is how my brain works. This is what I like to do. Like, I actually enjoy the machinations of my brain of like, what if Topps went out of business or had to be spun off or sold or any of these things? I'm like, how would that affect it? Would it be positive? Because, like, I believe we have to get back to a point where the product is better and cheaper, right? Like, not more complicated than that, right? Like, or some sort of innovation, because, the idea we're just going to give you more numbered cards and more sticker autographs, it's not going to work, right? You're just watering down what used to have value. So like you have to figure out a new way to create value, and some of it is like one of those ways is to cut costs. And like, you know, I mentioned Spirit Airlines before. Spirit Airlines is out of business, and they were the ones who kind of figured out all the ways to kind of nickel and dime people to death. And you know, it eventually killed them. But trust me, they're not going out of business. They'll just reorganize, and that's what I think is going to happen here. Like in a normal situation where you have a huge spike in a business and it comes back to earth, you see these problems. In this situation where they decided to go out and buy these licenses at the absolute top of the market and then let their competitor extract all the value, man, I've never seen anything like that. Like, and I might be a little bit above average intelligence, but I guarantee the people that are sitting in the underwriter rooms for an IPO are going to be like, if you bought these licenses today, what would they go for? Oh, you're paying the NBA $100 million a year, and it's really only worth 30. Yeah, you need to spin this off, bankrupt it, and then tell the NBA to take a fucking walk, or whatever, or make a deal with the NBA. Be like, hey, we both have to take the hit here. This shit isn't worth what we want. We'll take a hit. You'll take a hit, and we'll walk away. Trust me, there are smart people who are figuring this out that are way more intelligent than me, way more dialed in, and I think that's what's going to happen. But I hope you've enjoyed this thought exercise. Comment, tell me. I'm sure you don't agree. I'm sure, again, this is not a certitude. This is not anything. I'm not saying this absolutely is going to happen. I'm saying, like, it's plausible. If you don't think it's plausible, you're being insane. I'm telling you that right now. If you don't think it's plausible, you're completely out there. I'm not saying likely versus plausible are two different things. Likely means it's more likely to happen than not. Plausible means like 20 to 1, right? Like 20 to 1. It's like rolling. If it plausible to me is like, can you roll 2 sixes boxcars with 2 dice? That's plausible. It's 35 to 1, less than 3%. It's definitely plausible. To me, it's way more likely than that. But if you don't think it's plausible at all, you need to check yourself. But yeah, again, tell me where I'm right. Tell me where I'm wrong. Remember to subscribe. Not enough of people who watch my videos. Hit the subscribe button. Do it. I am in a race with myself to add 200 subscribers. I need to add 20 something in the next few weeks. And anytime I get a new subscriber, I need to do a new video. So if somebody subscribed and got me to talk shit about Fanatics for 35 plus minutes. So I'm not sports cards, and I am